Hello and welcome to this round 5 here at Pro Tour Aether Revolt. I'm Tim Willoughby, joined by Hall of Famer Luis Scott Vargas, and well, there's a lot of Hall of Famers lurking around our feature match area. You've already heard about one of them who is still 4-0. Let's head down so we get a chance to watch Jon Finkel give us a masterclass in Constructed. Hello and welcome to this round 5 here at Pro Tour Aether Revolt. Our players are just getting ready for another round of Constructed here in the feature match area, and we've got a fantastic match to kick things off with. Here we see Martin Juza of Team Channel Fireball Fire. One of 2 Channel Fireball teams here at the event, but he's got a stiff opponent here. We have Jon Finkel, consensus best player in the game, Luis.
Yeah, I think that if you look at all-time historical grades, Jon Finkel would be number 1.
And up to a perfect start here, 4-0 going into things, starting off already getting creatures on the board, able to battle with a big start, potentially getting in for a full 3 points of damage on turn 2 if he's able to find an artifact. There's the Toolcraft Exemplar and Heart of Kiran. There is the shock to deal with the Toolcraft Exemplar before Heart of Kiran is able to get crewed. Big plays from Martin Juza, who also has a Heart of Kiran for his start.
Yeah, Heart of Kiran is one of the more important cards to come out of Aether Revolt. It just adds a really large flying threat to various aggressive decks, and it synergizes nicely with cards like Toolcraft Exemplar or Scrap Heap Scrounger.
Yeah, Scrap Heap Scrounger just coming down there. That one of the threats that's going to keep coming back for Finkel if it does get killed off. And first blood to Jon Finkel attacking in with his Heart of Kiran there. How important is the ability to crew the Heart of Kiran with Planeswalkers in these decks, Luis?
It's relevant. Both decks have access to Planeswalkers. Martin has Chandra, Torch of Defiance, and Jon has Gideon, Ally of Zendikar. But it's mainly going to be crewed off of whatever creature you played that turn.
Yeah, sort of pseudo-haste for that creature, I suppose.
Martin has a pretty neat combo here that we might see. It's a Greenbelt Rampager. It generates an energy, but he can crew the Heart of Kiran before it returns back to his hand.
Oh, that's very cool. I mean, normally if you have to bounce it back to hand, that's sort of a little bit of a tempo hit, but this time around he's still going to get to hit in for 4 here. Oh, and Attune with Aether, meaning that he's going to be up to 3 energy. That elephant will be staying in play from here on out. Searches up a mountain here. The mana base for this deck looks pretty solid in spite of being 3 colors. We've already seen a little bit of black-green aggro. What does red really add to this mix, Luis? We
saw the shock on turn 1 take out the Toolcraft Exemplar, so that's a pretty big play. And then Harness Lightning also gives you additional disruption against the Saheeli Rai combo, which is a lot of what Martin was thinking about when he chose to put these cards in his deck.
Makes sense. There does come the Rampager. Costs a couple of energy when it comes into play, but now the 3/4 on the board for sort of 1 mana.
And because of the trick he used before, Martin is able to crew the Heart of Kiran in defense if he wants to.
Well, Jon Finkel asking the question here. He crews up his Heart of Kiran and gets stuck in. Vigilance meaning that the vehicle can make a lot of difference to boards attacking and blocking just fine.
Jon is pretty strongly representing unlicensed disintegration here, and I think Martin is well aware of that. So he has to decide whether he wants to expose his Heart of Kiran to that removal spell, especially when Jon is left up 3 mana in a pretty low curve deck.
Worth noting, of course, that Jon Finkel has access to 4 different colors of mana here. It's not just the Mardu Vehicles that we may have seen in previous Pro Tours. What's that blue mana potentially going to do for Jon here?
The most common blue spell to be played, and of course, which Jon does have in his main deck, is Metallic Rebuke, the new counter spell which you can improvise with cards like Heart of Kiran, Scrap Heap Scrounger, or Clues from Thraben Inspector. There's also various blue cards that could be put in the sideboard, but Metallic Rebuke is we saw earlier versions play Ceremonious Rejection. Metallic Rebuke is a very solid upgrade to that. It's just such a good disruptive spell in a deck that can pressure the opponent.
Yeah, a large proportion of the time, thanks to Improvise, it works as mana leak or better. And even at 3 mana, not the end of the world. But here comes our first Planeswalker of the game. Chandra, Torch of Defiance, can crew Hearts of Kiran, but can also do quite a lot of other things depending on what Martin Juza wants to get up to. Starts off by going +1, exiling Fleetwheel Cruiser.
You see, Martin is able to play a higher proportion of 4-drops in his deck because he has, Attune with Aether. He has a slightly higher mana count, and that gives him access to a more powerful endgame than some of the vehicles decks, perhaps. But Of course, playing more mana sources does make you a little bit less threat dense.
And there's the unlicensed disintegration. You called it, Luis. It was available there to deal with the Heart of Kiran. And given that Martin Juza also had to tap a creature, that's a pretty big tempo play.
It is, and Jon could have actually redirected to Chandra if he so choose, but Heart of Kiran can already finish Chandra off, so it is slightly more efficient to not end up doing that.
I mean, we spoke in the previous Pro Tour about the fact that Smuggler's Copter was around meant that there weren't too many Planeswalkers. Does Heart of Kiran take the spot of that to still make Planeswalkers a tough one in this format?
In some senses, yes. Heart of Kiran still threatens Gideon, Chandra, Nissa. They all, fear the Heart of Kiran. But because Heart of Kiran is a little bit less played than Smuggler's Copter, Copter was seen play in a lot of different decks, whereas Heart of Kiran is mainly in Vehicles decks and something like Green-White. You see slightly safer Planeswalkers than you did before.
And here's Depala Pilot Exemplar. If you're looking for a creature to crew a vehicle, this is pretty much the gold standard. Getting that little extra bonus. Paying X = 2, revealing the top 2, and looking for dwarves and vehicles. I wouldn't imagine too many dwarves in Finkel's deck, but plenty of vehicles in this Mardu Vehicles list.
Yeah, thanks to Toolcraft Exemplar and Veteran Motorist, there are more dwarves than you might suspect, but it's more vehicles and dwarves put together, especially with cards like Aethersphere Harvester.
And of course, that was an attack for 5. Going after Chandra, it didn't matter too much, but Depala does pump up your vehicles in addition to being a really excellent crew. At this point, Martin Juza on 6, it might be the first time for us to point out our advantage bar. Just at the bottom there, we have the opportunity to just give you an extra indication as if life and cards on board weren't enough of who is potentially ahead in any given game. We'll be moving that around a little bit here and there. In an aggro matchup, it can actually be kind of tricky to tell if both players are racing. It sounds like our feature match area is a relatively aggressive one. As much as we've got an aggro mirror going on here, in both of our other matches, we already have a game result. Makihito Mahara, a game up against Sam Tharmarapnan, and on our back table, Naoki Shimizu of Japan, a game up against Patrick Chapin of Team Top Level. Sweet Cruiser getting stuck in here. Haste a nice one in any kind of an aggro matchup.
And Martin is effectively at 1 thanks to Heart of Kiran, so he's really hoping Jon just doesn't have anything else. But if Jon doesn't, Jon can push in with Heart of Kiran, use Depala, hope to hit, maybe deploy something else to the board. But if he misses, then Martin does have lethal on the backswing if Martin can find either another haste creature or a way to remove a blocker. The vigilance on Heart of Kiran actually coming into play here. It doesn't come into play all that often, but right now it's really relevant.
Now, Jon's chosen to crew the Heart of Kiran with his Scrap Heap Scrounger rather than Depala. Why might that be?
So one reason to do that is now if Martin has a removal spell, if he targets Depala, Jon can crew Heart of Kiran. If Martin just attacks, Jon can block with Depala, and then if Martin has a removal spell, it's less relevant because Jon can just chump the Green Belt Rampager, go to 1 from the Fleet Wheel Cruiser. Martin really needed to draw something that can push through the last couple points here. Otherwise, Heart of Kiran is going to fly over and finish him off, and I think Voltaic Brawler is not quite going to do it.
Yeah, early doors, Voltaic Brawler, a fantastic fighter, but when you're looking for a way of finishing the game out that exact turn, not quite what you're looking for. It looks like Team Puzzle Quest might be picking up at least a game win here.
And you see the fact that Martin drew a Tune with Aether while already having, 5 lands in play, 1 in his hand. That is a disadvantage to playing basically more mana sources in your deck.
So the big swing's coming from Martin Juza. He is presenting a lethal attack, but of course blockers available to Jon Finkel.
Jon deciding now whether if you cruise with Depala, he opens himself up to dying to any removal spell that can kill Heart of Kiran, which not that many, it's a 5/5. If he doesn't crew with Depala, he's just straight up chumping, though he can chump and then crew afterwards to get a look at the top 6 cards. It is a little safer there, though if Martin then has a removal spell for Heart of Kiran when Jon attacks on the next turn, you're still in a lot of trouble, so it's almost immaterial when you end up exposing Heart to removal.
So Jon choosing to pay 4 here. And All of the cards he revealed do not fit the category that Depala likes. No vehicles, no dwarves in that mix. Saw a Fatal Push and a Scrap Heap Scrounger in the mix along with some lands, but he is able to get a block off here. And blocks the Fleetwheel Cruiser. Hartakir in a 5-5. 5-3 Fleetwheel Cruiser coming through here. So that's a trade.
3. Go.
And another land pickup here. Both of these aggro decks drawing quite a few lands. This is not really what the aggro deck's looking to do.
Well, luckily for Jon, if he attacks with both his creatures, Martin is out of luck here.
All right, Jon Finkel picking up the first game here. We will, of course, have plenty more from each of these two players. We're going to catch the whole rest of that match. But first, we will have these messages.
Initiate crowd control.
Want to play in the next Pro Tour? Qualifiers are happening this weekend on Magic Online. For more information, visit mtgo.com. Up your game with Ultra Pro Magic the Gathering accessories. Find the best Magic art on card sleeves, deck boxes, playmats, and more. Visit ultrapro.com to learn more and find a retailer near you.
Hello and welcome back to this round 5 here at Pro Tour Aether Revolt, our main match between Martin Juza and Mr. Jon Finkel. It's currently Finkel 1, Juza 0, so 1-0 to Team Puzzle Quest over Team Channel Fireball Fire here, and you can see the players just shuffling up as they go into round 2 or game 2 here. Now, after sideboarding, how much changes in this aggro matchup?
Quite a bit, in the sense that both players have access to more cheap interactive spells. Like Martin gets to bring in 4 Fatal Push if he wants all 4 of them, but that kills Heart of Kiran, that kills Toolcraft Exemplar. With Revolt, that can kill something like a Depala. And then Shock, and then mid-range threats like Sky Sovereign, Console Flagship, and Virtuous Gearhulk. So Martin can really transform his deck and make it a lot more efficient. Jon can do the same. He doesn't have access to quite as many removal spells, but he still has a Fatal Push. He has a couple, like, a Sky Sovereign, maybe more Gideons if he wants those. So you'd expect both players to have fewer dead cards or fewer cards that aren't efficient answers.
And it seems likely that we're going to have creatures not hanging around on the field, but one player who's not going to be hanging around in the feature match anymore, Makihito Mahara, correction from earlier on. Sam Thummeratman defeated him 2-0. That was another relatively aggressive matchup, and I think that might be something that we're going to see a fair amount of in this standard format by the looks of things.
Well, one of the good ways to defeat Saheeli Combo, which is another, probably the biggest deck coming in, was the various flavors of Saheeli, is to be aggressive and put pressure on your opponent, plus like a removal spell or two. So decks like Mardu Vehicles are something that I would expect to see a lot of.
All right, players drawing their opening hands here. It looks like we already have a good mix of creatures in hand for Jon Finkel. Not sure how much land he's got going on. Just ekes it out in those last couple of draws. Well,
Jon does have the... one of the prices you play for paying 4 colors is he's got Aether Hub as his only white source here, so he gets 1 shot at white mana. So he can play turn 1 Thraben Inspector, but then he can't play Veteran Motorist on turn 2 unless he draws... Well, he actually just can't straight up play it on turn 2 if he uses the Aether Hub on turn 1, and he can't even play it later unless he draws another white source.
Yeah, this is the kind of puzzle that we're used to in Modern, where you've got fetch lands and duels, but not quite so common in Standard. But a 4-color mana base, there's a few concessions in there, and the first action of the game coming on the other side of the table in Long Tusk Cub for Martin Juza.
And you see Jon decided to play no Inspector turn 1, so he can play Veteran Motorist turn 2 and try to scry into a white source, but currently he's got access to no white mana. He's got red and blue mana off Spirebluff Canal, but his hand is all white cards plus an unlicensed Disintegration.
Rough times for the Hall of Famer here. And Long Tusk Cub, it will generate energy if it gets to hit in, potentially get very large. It's a card that I'm excited to see if we get a chance to see it with Winding Constrictor at some point this weekend. That not something that looks to be on the cards from Martin Juza's deck, but there's a lot of options available to these Jund aggro decks. Voltaic Brawler coming down, offering still more energy for Martin Juza. And a Fatal Push to clear the way.
Yeah, it should be 2 energy. There we go.
Counter here. Attack. Generate 2 energy. Sure.
And this is Martin's deck doing what it wants to do. He gets to go 2-drop into 2-drop plus 1 mana removal spell, end up with a 3-2 and a 3-3 in play. The Long Tusk Cub can threaten to be a 4-4 at any point, and Voltaic Brawler can, of course, get pumped when it attacks.
Finkel drew the Fatal Push of his own there, but does not have black mana to be able to cast it. He's just going to have to watch on and see how quickly Martin Juza's deck can Goldfish here in Game 2.
Yeah, Aether Hub is a 1-shot mana source, does have a drawback, and right now, Jon's having a real hard time casting spells.
And the energy being provided by Aether Hub for Martin Juza may simply be used to pump up his team here. Voltaic Brawler gets to pump itself a small amount for energy, and, well, that Cub, it can use as much as it likes, but it can also generate it.
Yeah, and I suspect Martin's just going to swing for the fences here.
Yeah, the life totals on Jon Finkel's side moving pretty quickly here. And that enough for Finkel to scoop up his cards, not drawing the lands that he needed there, ultimately signaling his demise. A quick Game 2 there, Martin Juza able to square things up. We will be going to a Game 3, but while these guys are shuffling up, potentially tweaking a little bit of sideboarding, we're going to get a chance to see one of our other matches going on. There is another match in our feature match area we've not had a chance to see from just yet. That being, on our back table, Naoki Shimizu of Japan, and he's up against the Innovator on team top level, that being Hall of Famer Patrick Chapin. Shimizu is one of those players, I mean, as much as we speak about Patrick Chapin as being a real innovator, a real deck designer, he very regularly does bring interesting decks to the table, and it looks like that match may have just completed also. We'll see if we can get you an update for what happened there. I know that Shimizu-san was up in the first game, and it looks like he has been able to take that down 2-0 over Patrick Chapin. So he advances to 4-1 there after 2 rounds of Standard here at this tournament. These matches falling thick and fast in our feature match area. It'll be interesting to see whether or not this is a trend for the entire day, or whether or not the control decks just happen to be elsewhere in the room.
Yeah, I would imagine that most of the control decks, based around Torrential Gearhulk, are decks we'll see plenty of. There's Jeskai Saheeli with Gearhulk. There's blue-black control with Gearhulk, and I've actually seen a fair number of Grixis Torrential Gearhulks decks as well, kind of in the style of what Shota Yasuoka won Pro Tour Kaladesh with.
I must admit, I'm very interested to see what Shota himself did choose to play. When there's a control option available, he tends to gravitate towards it, and watching him play a control deck is one of my favorite things to do in Magic.
Well, he's swapped out black for white. He's playing Jeskai control now, though he does have the Saheeli combo in it as well.
Lovely stuff. Hopefully we'll get a chance to catch some of that later on. But in the meantime, Jon Finkel, he won his first game relatively fast, and then we got a whole new definition of fast for game 2 when mana issues meant that Martin Juza was able to square things up. This will be the deciding game, and Jon Finkel will be on the play for that. In an aggro matchup, that has to be pretty big, right?
It is bigger in game 1 than it is post-board. Once both players have access to Fatal Push, Shock, cheap 1-mana removal spells, Fragmentize, that sort of thing, then you end up... It's actually a lot less important because you can play your 2-drop and then end of turn they spend their 1-mana removal off their turn 1 land, and all of a sudden, they play a 2-drop and they're ahead on board. So because they get to utilize their turn 1 mana source a little bit better than you. So even though I would still certainly rather be on the play, Jon is going to choose to go first. It is less relevant once your opponent has something like 7 1-mana removal spells, which Martin can sideboard into.
We'll get a chance to find out which one of these top-level players is able to escape this round with an undefeated record. Soon enough, it looks like Jon's just finished shuffling up. We will find out soon enough how this game goes. Is the fact that Jon has an extra color of mana to worry about likely to trip him up again? I mean, it certainly seems a little bit tougher for him.
It is. I wouldn't expect him to have very many blue cards in his deck. Metallic Rebuke, maybe not the most effective against a deck full of cheap spells, but that still means you've got Spire Bluff Canal in your deck that's essentially just a mountain with a drawback. So Jon does have that to deal with, but overall the mana bases in these decks, they are pretty good despite playing a lot of colors.
And I think I spy a Verdurous Gearhulk in the pickup here from Martin Juza. This is an opportunity to go big with his aggro deck, potentially bigger than what Jon has going on. Jon's hand looks to be a reasonable mix. Plenty of lands going on at very least.
Jon will be able to cast his spells this game.
And it looks like with Attune with Aether, plenty of lands are going to be coming along at some point for Martin Juza, but in the meantime, does he have a threat on turn 1? Looks like it's not. 2 energy coming along, and his deck does seem to have a lot of good ways of utilizing that energy.
Yeah, between Long Tusk Cub, Greenbelt Rampager, and Voltaic Brawler, he's got good outs to use the energy for profit.
Finkel with plenty of colors available. Let's see what he can deploy with them.
Veteran Motorist.
There's that veteran Motorist, and the Scry 2, a pretty important piece of the puzzle there. He sees Pianalar and a Fatal Push.
Pianalar is appealing given that Jon doesn't have a 3-drop right now. The only disadvantage to keeping Fatal Push, though it's quite a good card in the matchup, is that Jon really, if wants another threat, if his Veteran Motorist ends up dying, then he might end up a little threat light. It looks like he did elect to keep both here.
And I think we're going to see the first threat of the game from Martin Juza, that being Voltaic Brawler, up to 4 energy, so he can probably get away with activating its ability more than once here.
And even though the Brawler is better on attack than defense, I wouldn't be surprised if Martin elected to trade here. One of the advantages to trading would be that Martin's hand has a lot of good expensive spells. He has Skyship and he's got Verdurous Gearhulk, so he really wants to survive to get to 5 mana. That does lean you towards trading for the now 4/2 Veteran Motorist.
Yeah, Dapala there. Many abilities, one of which giving dwarves +1/+1. Veteran Motorist is a dwarf. Trading off with the Veteran Brawler there. Voltaic Brawler, sorry.
In post-board, Martin certainly is somewhat less of an aggressive deck, given that he has more removal and powerful 5-drops. It's like he's turned into a mid-range deck, and that is kind of what his deck is suited to do.
Now, generally speaking, on sort of, if we're talking about macro archetypes, does the more mid-range deck have a favorable matchup against aggro?
You want to be like one step higher, mid-range being one step higher than aggro, and so that does give Martin good positioning here, though Jon's draw is lined up fairly well here, having 2 powerful 3-drops and 2 removal spells to kind of deal with what Martin has played.
Greenbelt Rampager, a 3-4 coming down and leaving mana up for Martin Juza to play spells. It does fall to Fatal Push, but at least there's Harness Lightning mana available to him if he wants to throw it out there, and it looks like it is the correct answer to that Depala. An empty board once again. Pia Nalar comes along, brings a Thopter for Jon Finkel.
And Pia, very good when both players are sitting there throwing removal spells at each other, just because she has 2 threats in 1 card. If Martin kills Pia, then Jon is still left with a Thopter, and obviously if Martin deals with a Thopter, Pia is still quite the threat.
Another Attune with Aether, finding more land for Martin Juza here. He does want to hit his land drops more than perhaps he did in game 1, because we know there's 2 very powerful 5-drops in hand for him.
And this is somewhat of the advantage of playing the deck that Martin's playing. The higher land count does come into play post-board games.
It's 20 each, right? Yes.
And I guess the Fatal Push that we've seen characterize the early game doesn't do anything against some of the biggest threats that Martin Juza is able to deploy here. Rishkar Pima Renegade, only creature in play for Martin Juza, so he only gets to throw 1+1/+1 counter around, but still a 3/3 for 3.
And critically gets Martin to his 5th mana here, since he doesn't have a 5th land in hand. Part of the reason to play Rishkar is that Rishkar will now tap for a green mana, and that lets Martin play Sky Sovereign or Virtuous Gearhook next turn, even if he doesn't draw an untapped land. And you'll see a lot of this in these various decks, is a lot of the lands they can draw will enter the battlefield tapped. You know, your Game Trails, your Spire Bluff Canals, your Concealed Courtyards. Later in the game, those tend to enter the battlefield tapped, and that makes playing 5-drops a little bit harder.
Jon Finkel of Team Puzzle Quest puzzling it out here.
Jon's big concern here is whether he wants to use Unlicensed Disintegration on effectively a 3/3, and he doesn't know that Martin has powerful 5-drops in hand, so it might look to him like just a vanilla 3/3.
Passes the turn, so Martin Juza will have the opportunity to generate mana with that Rishkar.
Yeah, that's a really good opportunity for Martin, and being able to play like something like Sky Sovereign and just pick off Pia or pick off the Thopter is pretty powerful, and it interacts very well against something like Unlicensed Disintegration, which Jon could easily be representing by leaving up 4 mana.
Sky Sovereign is the play here. Even if there's removal from Finkel, then it will work out that Martin gets some value out of his big vehicle. Now he's targeting the Thopter here. Why would the Thopter be a bigger target than Pia herself?
He might think that Jon has another copy of Pia, who's legendary. He also might want to remove Jon's only artifact because of cards like Unlicensed Disintegration or Toolcraft Exemplar that gain power from having artifacts in play.
So Juza drops to 17 off that Unlicensed Disintegration. He doesn't have a creature to crew, so he's going to take a hit of 2 here from Pia Nalar. And it looks like Finkel has a follow-up vehicle of his own. Aetherspore Harvester, another one of the interesting vehicles that's come from Aether Revolt. It's got a lot of toughness. It's got the ability to gain lifelink, which I'm guessing is great in races, and Pia can both crew it and then pump its power.
Yeah, but that Sky Sovereign is going to really put Martin ahead here. Because he has the Voltaic Brawler, he's going to be able to crew an attack with Sky Sovereign, kill off Pia Nalar, and leave Jon with a Aethersphere Harvester and no way to crew it. So the advantage, I think, is firmly in Martin's favor.
You can see there our advantage bar at the bottom of the screen. The fact that it's pointing slightly more to Martin is our way of saying that on top of anything you can see from life totals or from the board, we believe that right now, if all things stay equal, Martin is favored to win the game.
And had Martin drawn an untapped 5th land, Virtuous Gearhook coming down would have been a pretty big deal as well. But that Blossoming Marsh actually does, enter the battlefield tapped.
Voltaic Brawler here, though, a second one, both pushes the energy count, does mean that there's a creature to crew the big airship and some big attacks coming from Martin Juza here. Sky Sovereign rumbling over, but also the first Voltaic Brawler. And Jon Finkel now, he's in check. He needs to deal with all the things that are in play, cannot find any more than a land on top of his deck, extends the hand, and congratulations to Martin Juza of Team Channel Fireball Fire. He's able to continue his undefeated streak up to 5-0 here. And that, the last game here in our feature match area, it was aggro all the way, and ultimately the ability to move into a slightly more mid-range deck paying dividends there for Martin Juza.
Yeah, had Jon killed Rishkar on his own turn, then Martin may never have hit the 5th mana, but he didn't predict that Martin had a bunch of 5-drops in post-board.
Yeah, I mean, we're still in relatively early stages of Constructed here at Pro Tour Aether Revolt. As we get later on in the weekend, it may be that players start to sense out the details of what's going on, but with a 3-color aggro deck, there are a lot of options available. It's hard to predict exactly what your opponent's brought to the table.
Definitely.
We didn't get a chance to see too much more of the other matches, but we do know that Naoki Shimizu was able to win his match over Patrick Chapin from Team Top Level. Also, Sam Thamaratman, one of the non-finished players from the almost finished team, able to defeat Makihito Mohara from Last Samurai. But there's been so many other matches out in the feature match area. We're going to send you back to the news desk now with Rich Hagan so you can find out more about all of them.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the news desk. Rich Hagan here at the end of round number 5. 5 down, 3 to go. Well, I say 5 down, there's still 12.5 minutes left on the clock. I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to bring you some bonus magic from down on the floor in just a moment or two. So why don't we do that? Let's head down to our very own Brian David Marshall. Now I know a couple of minutes ago, Mike Sigrist was still in action. I wonder if that's still the case. BDM, who are you watching?
No, you know what? That match just ended. I'm going to try to find out what happened over there, but we've moved over to watch former Rookie of the Year, Raymond Perez Jr. of Hot Sauce Games, playing against Hall of Famer and member of Team Coverage, Frank Karsten. And we see the Jeskai deck. Frank Karsten is at 20. Raymond Perez Jr. is at 12. This is Game 3. Frank Karsten's board is 2 Scrap Heat Scroungers, a Thraben Inspector, and a Clue versus a Torrential Gearhulk. He just brought another Scrap Heap Scrounger back from his graveyard at the end of Raymond's turn.
So BDM, Hot Sauce Games, they're kind of one of what we call the mid-level teams, not necessarily expecting to be in the thick of things come Pro Tour Hour of Devastation to go all the way to the World Championship final, but seeing whether they can get any of these sort of mid-level grinders to 11-5 at this PT to come back for Amonkhet and maybe make a run towards more silver, more gold, more platinum.
Yeah, you're certainly looking to follow in the footsteps of what we saw from East-West Bowl last season. A lot of silver, almost gold pros trying to, finish the job.
A lot of people asked me, BDM, at Prague last weekend, and I know Frank had a lot of comments on this. How is it possible that you're actively playing Magic, you're a Hall of Famer, and you're not on any team? And it's a pretty straightforward answer. Remember, there are only 3 Pro Tours this season with the team series in effect, because obviously we didn't start at Pro Tour Kaladesh. Frank already knows that at least one of the next 2 he's not going to be able to attend, and he felt no matter what experience, what decks, what expertise he brought to any given team, he didn't feel it was right to be on a team when he would only play in a maximum of 2 of the 3 events.
Okay, Rich, we see a Wandering Fumarole step in the way of a Needle Spires, a Torrential Gearhulk step in the way of a Scrap Heap Scrounger, and 2 Scrap Heap Scroungers, and a Thraben Inspector are left unblocked, but Galvanic Bombardment takes one of them out as well. Harnessing the power of lightning here to take down another one, and in the end, 1 point of damage comes through to Raymond Perez Jr.
That seemed like a pretty good exchange for Ray Perez.
But by the way, I can tell you that Panagatos Papadopoulos of Conflagrease did defeat Mike Sigris of Channel Fireball Ice.
That's awesome.
This round.
That's awesome. We're actually going to talk with Bill Chronopoulos in between this round and the next round. If we get a chance, he came in yesterday to tell us all about Conflagrease. So we'll see if we can get that queued up for you. So Frank Karsten is at 15. Raymond Perez Jr. at 11. Here's a veteran motorist. He's going to get to Scry. Actually fall into 10 here. Raymond Perez was anticipating the end of Frank's turn there. Yeah, negate and a couple of land, but I mean, turning anticipate into negate's perfectly fine. And he certainly feels like he's turned the corner here.
Just smashes in with the Gearhulk, and that's going to drop Frank down to 10. It's time for the Scrap Heap Scroungers to scavenge on themselves here as they start returning from the graveyard.
As the clock ticks down, plenty more big results coming in. I can tell you that Felipe Valdivia of Chile is up to 5-0. He's on Dex third, very much the third team from the former Dex Army. They have Dex Army, Liga Magics, they're number 2. Dex third is the third, but I bet they wish they had Felipe Valdivia on their team. He is 5-0.
See Raymond Perez Jr. laying out his graveyard, giving Frank a look at it. And Frank lines up his attacks. In comes a veteran motorist. In comes a Scrap Heap Scrounger. Maybe. Frank, of course, not stuck on 4 lands. He lost the land in that last combat when his Needle Spires went down. In come the 2 attackers. Oh. Kozilek's Return is the play from Raymond Perez Jr. Here's a Cultivated Caravan as the follow-up. It gets negated by Raymond Perez Jr. Yeah. He is firmly in the lead here. That Clue cannot block a Torrential Gearhulk, and Frank Karsten is down to 5. He draws his card for the turn.
Yeah, I think we can agree the advantage bar is pointing quite heavily towards Ray Perez here.
There's DePaula. There's a land. Says go. Galvanic bombardment from Raymond Perez Jr. He's got one in his yard. Says, I'm willing to attack. Frank extends the hand. Raymond Perez Jr. takes the match here at table 33. So sending it back to you up at the news desk, Rich Hagon.
All right, thanks very much to Brian David Marshall there down on the floor, giving us all the results as they come in. More results here from Team Genesis. Lucas Blahon is up to 5-0. I've already mentioned Cesar Segovia. A couple of players who aren't on teams at 5-0, because let's not lose sight, ultimately this is an individual contest looking for 8 slots in the top 8 on Sunday and eventually a Pro Tour title. And only one person can win that. So, players who aren't on teams but are on 5-0. Toru Inoue of Japan, he's been around the Pro Tour a good while, and Silver Pro Daniel Grafensteiner from Germany, he's got a Pro Tour top 8 to his name as well. I also want to call out Pete Ward of the United Kingdom, young man playing in one of his early Pro Tours. He's just had a great win over Last Samurai's Kenji Samura. 6 Pro Tour top 8s, a Hall of Fame. That's why you try to qualify for the Pro Tour, because you battle, you fight, you get yourself into constructed, you're 2-2, and then who do you face? One of the all-time historic figures in the game, and you come away with a win. Great memory for Pete Ward. Congratulations to him. But Brian David Marshall hasn't just been out on the floor, he's been out all over Dublin, because the teams have been gearing up since GP Prague, and in some cases before that. And one of the teams that are trying to make an impression, most of them from America, and a team that quite a lot of you at home will know about if you watch a lot of streaming, is Team Card Hoarder. So what's going on in their world?
We're right alongside the Grand Canal Quay here in Dublin, Ireland. We're in the center of the tech district, and there couldn't be a better place to break a format for a Pro Tour. That's exactly what Team Card Hoarder's trying to do. 6 players, they're hanging out in that building over there on the 10th floor. They're drafting, they're trying to break standard, they're looking at the results. These are guys who've made their name on the Star City Open Series. Team Card Hoarder existed before this Pro Tour Team Series was announced, and now they're trying to see if they can replicate that success on this level at the GP and Pro Tour level. Let's go check in with them and see what they are up to.
I'm Noah Walker. I've been playing Magic for too long now at this point, or so it feels, you know. Like for only being 20, I've been playing for basically half my life or almost longer. Started playing at my local game store when I was 9.
I'm Jacob Baugh. I've been playing Magic pretty much my whole life. I started when I was 7. I'm now 27. So, it's just been one of my passions since I was a child.
My name is Bobby Graves. My Magic resume starts back at Betrayers of Kamigawa.
My name is Joe Lissette. I'm from Southern California, and if you've heard of me, it's probably because you follow Legacy.
All right, so I'm Zachary Keeney. I'm a student at UMass Amherst right now. I'm 20 years old, and I got here through top 8 in Grand Prix Providence.
I've been playing the SCGs since I started in around 2010. Made a name for myself playing in those. They've been pretty great to me. Won the Invitational, went to the Players Championship, made top 4. It's pretty good. I have a token from the SCG. It's basically an energy reserve token. You get it from anyone who wins a SCG Invitational gets a token made in their image. And I've always been bears have been my favorite animal, so I'm drawing energy from a bear. So it was something I definitely wanted to happen, and I'm super, and I got coming to the Pro Tour from that invite as well.
I have a few SCG Open top 8s, 1 GP top 8, and this is my 4th Pro Tour. Oh, I am the Winter King also. I've won Kentucky's Winter King tournament extended a few times.
I qualified in Legacy. I got second in Grand Prix Columbus over the summer with Miracles, and that was, I mean, if I was going to end up back on the Pro Tour, I mean that's just how it was likely to happen, and it did. I mean, there aren't too many, you know, opportunities to qualify for the Pro Tour in Legacy, but I'm on top of them, and that one went through.
So this is my first Pro Tour. I've really gotten a lot better over the past year to 2 years. I actually top 8'd the last RPTQ, but lost to Gerard Fabiano. So, did not get there. But this is the first Pro Tour I've qualified for, and I'm very excited to play.
Basically, it all started with Chris Anderson, actually. He formed a Starts of the Games team called Lotus.
So I won an open while being Lotus. It started a few different teams on the series, and it started growing and booming, and like everyone just putting on shirts and trying to represent their group of players to know that they have the best process for playing these events.
We got in touch with Nathaniel Buckley-Wright, the owner of Card Hoarder, and basically we formed a team at first to focus on the SCG Tour mainly, because that's where everyone on the team had the most success. But especially this year moving forward, we're just going to try our hardest to grind, you know, as many PTs as we can play in, and do well in GPs and see where we can take it from there.
I initially didn't join Card Hoarder. This year at the start of the season, they offered it to me again, and you know, I had no reason not to take it this time, so I joined in. It's a bunch of people that I've been friends with for a while now.
Well, I'm the new guy on the team. I've been on the team for around a month now.
So I came through Noah Walker, who actually lives in Amherst. So I haven't actually met the other 4 people on the team. This is my first time meeting them. I've seen their names, of course, but this is my first time like meeting, talking to them, and playing with them. And I'm looking forward to it. It should be a good experience.
It's been a pretty good experience so far. The team really changes the whole dynamic. Like playing for other people and not just yourself is just something that's very different. When Magic is a 1v1 game, it's not something you think about you wanting your teammates to succeed and getting your name out there like that. So
I definitely want to learn how to play test better, because currently I'll play test with my friends at home. It's kind of casual, just do whatever, but getting a process down and a way to play test and get results and tune decks and make the most of your time is definitely something I want to learn to do better. And hopefully I think the team can learn to do that and we can be really productive.
I guess I'm just like easily one of the most, you know, vocal people on the team. I like hyping people up. It's what I'm about. I'm really about bringing everyone together, and I really love my friends. You know, that's what the most important thing to me is. Through Magic, especially, I've just met so many people, and it's just been a really great experience. And the friends are what make it worth it, basically. So.
Well, it's sort of a motivator, because like even if I was playing for just myself, I might not be motivated to try and work on the format or pick a better deck, but now I'm like obligated to, because I can help other people succeed.
It's a little tough. It's very invigorating. Like, you want to do well for the team. They're hearing this for the first time right now, probably, as I say this. I don't know that I would consider myself a very good team player. You know, I was unsure. I was uncertain about how to approach that, and I actually asked Reed Duke recently after we played at an event, and I asked him, like, how do you balance that, or how should I balance that? And he said, you know, working for the team is important, obviously, but really you should try and maximize how well you personally are going to do, and then that'll just carry over to being a good use for the rest of the team. That was good to hear that from the perspective of someone who's obviously been through playing on high-level teams over a couple of years.
I'm really looking forward to this experience, and I think it hopefully will make me grow as a player, seeing how the best in the game play.
Hello, welcome back to the news desk. That was a really, really nice piece, because those are players who aren't necessarily going to be playing for top 8 on Sunday, but if just one of them could be live down the stretch, that would be a great achievement for a mid-level team. And again, so many of these teams, they have their own goals, and just listening to them say how much more important it feels when Magic's a one-on-one game, but when you get to play for everyone else, it's really special. And that's where those special friendships that Noah Walker talks about are made. Thanks very much to Brian David Marsh for a really lovely piece on Card Hoarder. Plenty more team action coming your way from BDM as we head down the stretch of day 1 and into day 2 and beyond. But it's deck tech time once again here at Pro Tour Aether Revolt. Simon Nielsen, you'll remember from the Danish World Magic Cup team that won the WMC at Nice in 2014. We'll be back there later this year. He's turned that into a real Magic career where he's certainly really developed as a player. He's over at the video wall with our own Ian Duke.